So here's my hunch. For all the focus on culture war issues, the working class on the left and the right have a lot more in common than we're led to believe. And if that's true, it could and should have huge implications for the upcoming presidential election. So I went to Erie, Pennsylvania to find out.
In partnership with More Perfect Union, reporter John Russell went to a Trump rally in Erie, Pennsylvania to see if there's any possible common ground among the left and basically the MAGA crowd. And I absolutely love the report. We covered it extensively on the show last week. It was amazing to see just how thoughtful these voters happen to be, as long as the reporter, actually decides to ask some important questions on issues that go beyond the culture wars. And I do want to share some of my favorite moments from that report, just in case you all missed it. Let's take a look.
There's so many houses for sale in our neighborhood. I was going to go to town and say, are these all, can we find out, are these just real people buying them, or is this like proxies? Yeah. See, BlackRock proxies, Vanguard proxies. Are they buying all these homes so people can't own them and they're just going to rent them?
Would you be excited if Trump did anything to rein in
Well, of course. It's just
it's a monopoly that needs to be broken up. Just like, remember the telephone company in the 80s, AT&T, that was broken up.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be done.
Capitalism's not the problem. It's been corrupted to such a level, just like people think all the politicians are corrupted. But it's corrupted at the highest levels of these corporations, like you said, being owned. Instead of 200 of them, you're down to 4. Yeah. That's a massive control.
Joining us now is John Russell, who actually did the report for More Perfect Union and describes himself as an Appalachian dive bartender and eater of the rich. He's also a writer over at Substack, and you should follow his Substack and labor-related topics. It's called The Holler. And John, thank you so much for joining us, but more importantly, thank you for doing that report. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Anna. I'm excited to join the show.
It's good to have you. I have so many questions for you. I'm gonna start off by asking if you received any backlash at all for the report that you did.
Really, it was surprisingly little backlash. I mean, the YouTube comment section can go south in a hurry, but I think it was pretty positive, and I think that just speaks to the fact that people all feel like we're in this painful stagnation, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, and there's a large appetite out there to get out of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I certainly feel that appetite, and just to share where I'm coming from, just full disclosure. I look back at especially the last 6 years. I look at the Trump administration and the way the left has kind of responded to it. And I feel that we might need to really reconsider our strategy. And what you did in that report touches on something that increasingly seems to be the best strategy in order to build coalitions necessary to get the policies we want accomplished. So let's back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came up with this idea to go to a Trump rally and ask questions that you typically do not see journalists asking these, the MAGA crowd.
Well, I mean, the first thing that came to mind is just the quality of the interviews that were coming out at these Trump rallies. I mean, most of the videos are just kind of farming for clicks or profiting off of clicks, picking out the most ridiculous interviews and painting this picture of the worst examples of 80 million Americans, right? And to me, just to back up and tell you about myself, I grew up in the Ohio Valley. It is the heart of the Rust Belt, right? The place where NAFTA still means something and is still very fresh. I worked at a dive bar here, and I am a very open leftist. I make no bones about that. And when you work in a bar in a county where the county voted for Trump by 71%, and you don't hide your politics, you're gonna have those conversations. But as I did over a year, those conversations went pretty well because we kept them class-based And something I want to talk about here too, you can't have class-based politics without getting people over the hump of all of the divisive issues, things that are usually exploited, race, gender, religion, getting over those and showing people that you need the person that's different than you as much as they need you to actually get something done. As a working class coalition, you have to get over those things. And I was having those kind of conversations in the bar, and I wanted to take those up and see if they held up at the Trump rally. And I was pleased to find out what we had when we went up.
I was definitely pleased as well. I mean, it was a relief to hear a voter on the other side of the aisle show just how aware he is of what the private equity firms are up to, what BlackRock is up to in regard to the real estate market and how it's pricing ordinary people out of residential real estate. I mean, it's a side of the MAGA crowd that you just don't see in the press. And I think for a very specific reason, specifically because it would force them to touch on class politics. And class politics, I think, unites us, whereas a lot of the culture war narratives, and especially the way they're covered and how they play out in the press, only divides us. And of course, they get their cues, in my opinion, from politicians in both parties, right? And so I want to kind of share my thesis with you, and I want to get your thoughts on that, because I've increasingly started to believe that with the Citizens United ruling and with moneyed interests basically filling the coffers of politicians on both sides of the aisle, you essentially have two parties that are increasingly similar when it comes to the substantive bread and butter issues, the economic issues. And I feel that the way they try to differentiate themselves from one another, right, the left versus right in the political landscape, is to really lean into the culture war stuff. And most of it is messaging. I think most of it is performative, right? You'll hear Democrats claim that they want to protect the lives and improve the lives of marginalized communities. But then when you actually look at the policies, there's much to be desired. The right wing has always been pretty mask off when it comes to how protectionist they are when it comes to traditional values and things like that. So none of that surprises me. But there's a lot of theater going on right now among our politicians in regard to culture war issues to just kind of provide the illusion of governance, when in reality, there's actually a lot of agreement between those two sides when it comes to economic policies and essentially providing cover for corporate interests and corporate greed. Maybe I'm being a little harsh in the way that I'm analyzing this, but I am curious what you think about it.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed what's happening here. And it's just no surprise across the political spectrum. When you go up and you talk to people like a human being, you find out that even folks in line at a Trump rally, you might not expect them to talk with you and say, hey, my healthcare doesn't cover anything. I am paying hundreds of dollars out of pocket per month and thousands of dollars before my healthcare ever kicks in to fix anything that's wrong with me. We watched, one person lose $200 billion and still be the second richest man on earth. People are looking out at the same reality here. I mean, Maui's on fire. You can see in New York City, right? And they're saying, who's really benefiting from all of this? Why can't we seem to get any response out of our political system? Those feelings, they're alive and well on the left and on the right. And if we want to unite around those, I think we have to break out of the generic politics that's offered to us by candidates and by legacy media. If you tuned into Fox or CNN, you're gonna have one view of what people think up there that doesn't necessarily, isn't grounded in reality. And I think where that gets really interesting is where you start to ask people, what do we do about this? Our political system is not responding, right? So we had really good conversations. Instead of looking to make change in the political space, we asked, why don't we make change in the workplace? Mm-hmm. The political space is not responding, but you saw UPS workers standing in the hundreds of thousands strong, and that solidarity around class won them a contract that has $30 billion cash in hand in the pocket. When we talked with Trump voters about that, they were down for it. They were supportive. They didn't always necessarily know about it because it doesn't show up on the legacy media. But when we went up there and we talked about these things, you can clearly see, I mean, this is one Trump rally and a few interviews, but even with that, it is obvious that there are a pile of political chips being left on the table here that are the raw materials for working class solidarity that can win in the workplace. And I think if we organize around that, the political power that flows from being organized in the workplace, from being surrounded by people who are different than you, but all fighting the boss together to improve your life, that is something that could change our politics overnight, and it was reflected up there in the rallies.
Yeah, just to buttress your point, I want to just provide some polling data in regard to how Americans overall feel about some of these economic issues. Let's start with a Vox poll. So a Vox Data for Progress poll back in 2021 found that a whopping 71% of the respondents support raising the taxes of the wealthiest 2% of Americans, while a Reuters poll from 2020 found that 64% support a wealth tax, a slight increase from a 2019 Brookings poll that found that 61% support taxing the rich. In addition to that, the Vox poll from that year found, or last year I should say, found 50% support for taxing the rich among Republicans specifically, right? And so just based on this poll, based on the reporting and the answers that the Trump supporters gave in the report that you put out there, based on the way voters overwhelmingly rejected issue 1 in the state of Ohio, in your state, based on the ballot measure that voters in Florida overwhelmingly supported to increase the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour. Like, in case after case, you see common ground among Americans across the political spectrum, regardless of where they fall on that political spectrum. And those issues are typically the bread and butter issues that lead to some economic stability for these folks. And what you just mentioned about the workplace and how important an organized workplace is to building the coalitions we need, but also having an outside pressure campaign that's successful enough to influence the politicians to actually work for us as opposed to corporate interests. In order to improve the conditions in the workplace, your immediate conditions, all of that stuff is super important. All of those conversations, I believe, are being intentionally left out in corporate media, and instead, there's a lot of focus on what makes us different from one another, why we should be scared of one another based on what our identity is. And so that's my long setup to ask you, how do we approach this strategy of building a broad coalition of people based on these similar economic interests, without leaving behind the concerns of people who have experienced racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia? Those are real concerns. And I think that what ends up getting kind of left behind in their minds as we talk about this strategy is what their concerns are and how these marginalized communities have been treated historically and currently in America. What is your answer to that?
I think we have a lot to learn from labor history that has been, deliberately swept under the rug, kept out of textbooks. I am a minute away from Wheeling, West Virginia here, and we have a long history of dealing with exactly this that you may not have heard about, but it goes back to the workplace. I think if you want to meeting people where they are is always going to be messy, right? We have had a 50-year right-wing propaganda effort that's been financed by billions of dollars that is engineered to divide people on race and gender lines. How do you fight back against that? Get everybody in the same boat on class-based issues and fight a common enemy together. And if you have to work to survive in this country, if you can't afford to skip work, then you are all in the working class. Okay, so we have a very small and powerful elite, group of super rich people who are calling the shots. There's your common enemy. The workplace is where it takes place. And what can that teach us from history? Well, in the 1900s in West Virginia, miners, coal miners here were taking an oath to join the UMWA, to never discriminate against a fellow worker on the basis of race or religion or gender or otherwise. There's all kinds of history of labor organizing and union organizing. I mean, farm equipment workers in the 1940s were marching to integrate the towns in Kentucky where they worked. They were electing Black leadership. They had multiracial coalitions that were marching to integrate towns in the South 20 years before Dr. King marched on Washington. The roots of multiracial solidarity are right here for us to pick up and work with, and they can sell in the Rust Belt. And we should get back to that, because if you're going to stay united, if you're going to win on class issues, then you do have to address everything that you brought up. Racism, transphobia, homophobia. Those are the first things that the powerful interests are going to try to pick off and divide your class unity with. So when you're trying to make a win like that, class politics necessarily means that you're gonna have to show people with differences in the same boat that you all need each other as much as the next person. And unlike politics, that is unresponsive and kind of abstract to everybody. It's just entertainment now. The workplace is immediate, it's every day. And the wins that you get there are tangible, okay? My own kind of editorializing here is that I think a lot of what goes into this Trump movement is very intense opinions that are loosely held. I mean, politics, we all look at it and we think it's set in stone. But Donald Trump, we all remember a time where it wasn't possible for him to become president. Same thing with Barack Obama. These things can change overnight. So I don't buy that this whole, millions of people, yes, there's definitely intense opinions on some of this. Like I said, it's gonna be messy when you go to meet people where they are. But how strongly those are set in stone, I'm not sold on. And I think one of the best things to fight back against that is to organize in the workplace, where you have to fight these issues out and remain together if you're gonna get anything done.
Totally agree with you, and I'm so happy that you're saying this. I'm happy with the work that you're doing. It's incredibly important and honestly principled and difficult to do, especially in the current climate that we're in. Like, I just know from personal experience, the whole ongoing debate between class essentialism and race essentialism. It's frustrating because I do think that the most intersectional group of people in the country are workers, so we're improving working conditions overwhelmingly improves the conditions of these marginalized communities. But I want to end with a quick video from a YouTuber by the name of Devin Gibson. Wasn't familiar with him, he is a conservative, but he saw your report and here's his reaction to it.
This is probably one of the best all-around civil discussions between liberals and conservatives that I've ever seen. I mean, that was gooder than chicken right there. This guy, I think John Russell was his name. He did an outstanding job. And shout out to More Perfect Union, the channel over on YouTube as well, for putting this video together and going out there and doing what a lot of people aren't willing to do in this day and age. They're not willing to sit down, have discussions about how we can all really unite and really improve and thrive as a country. Remember, this America, United States of America, is supposed to be about we the people. But nowadays we got the media, the politicians, these forces that be, these powers that be, all about greed, all about smoke and mirrors and pinning us against each other, dividing and conquering, talking about and making up issues along the way to try to deter our attention from what they really got going on behind closed doors.
So congratulations, John. You just got a conservative to give a shout out to More Perfect Union, and I'm here for it. I love it. It's so good.
Let me say one thing to add on to that, and this is one of the biggest pushback things we got there. Obviously, it is much easier for someone who looks like me, generic white guy with a mullet, to break through to this guy wearing an American flag and a cross. But this reaching out like that is a job for people who look like me. I mean, that's about the only job that I should be doing. We shouldn't be burdening people of color to reach out to those who are very far down the pipeline. But it is possible to do. You just saw it, and we need a lot more of it.
Totally agree. John, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being generous with your time and joining us here at TYT. I hope you keep doing this excellent work, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thanks a lot, Anna. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.